Welcome to the channel. My name is acelewy. Getting into this video, this is going to be a video that's going to be a little bit long, so bear in mind with this. This is going over everything, detailing this incredible build right here. This is a perfect hybrid between being able to survive any attacks being thrown at you, while also at the same time debuffing and buffing yourself so that you're able to burst through just about anybody with gank level efficiency. We're able to pump out just as much damage as most of the gank builds. With that being said, let's get into the video. Now, first things first, let's get into our max resources to really understand everything. So, how this build operates is, there's a couple passives that's allowing us to get up to this much health, and starting off, the most important thing you need to see is we have 64 points into our health. That is very important because we're getting a lot of base numbers into our health, so that when we get our percentages kicking in, it's going to be pretty significant. As well, there is a lot of base numbers in general that we're doing to get our max health up, so it really is stacking up pretty high. With that being said, we also have a fair bit amount of max magicka and stamina in this case. 23k is not a lot, neither is 21k. However, for this Magblade and Magblades in general, you don't need to have a lot of mag recovery or stam recovery in order to sustain yourself. There's a couple passives that I'll actually go over right now and showcase to you so you can really see how they work. First is Executioner. When an enemy dies after being damaged by you, you restore 1000 mag and stam to you. That isn't as important, but when you start getting a lot of kills and you're constantly involved in kills in particular, that is a really great source of sustain. Lastly, getting into refreshing shadows, you can see that's giving us 15% mag and stam recovery. That really helps out a lot when you already have a lot of base mag and stam recovery. However, in this case we won't have too much for our build. And going into the siphoning tree, this is the one that's really strong right here. Siphoning attacks right here. So whenever we're doing light attacks and heavy attacks, it's going to heal us, but it's also going to restore magicka to us. And then on top of that, when the skill finally runs out, we're going to get another 4000 magicka and stam. Well, not stam, but we get 4000 mag from that. That's really powerful, considering that we also have a passive magicka flood that's giving us another 8% increase for having a siphoning skill slotted on either of our, really. On the front bar we have power extraction, which is giving us major brutality and all that, but the most important thing is it's also then giving us this max magicka. And on our back bar we have a lot of skills giving us well, not too many actually. We'll talk about ultimates and all that in a second, but for right now we have two skills right there giving us that, and then on top of that, because we have these skills slotted on our bar, it gives us some healing done. So going back to our character sheet and really going over our attributes and everything, for starting off, this is actually really great. This is really great for our max resources. And then when it comes to our sustain, obviously when we go into the deeper thing, really just go deep into it and I show you the footage of it, you can understand that it's actually really great the amount of stam and recovery, well, mag and stam recovery you have, because this seems really weak, but once we include everything else that we have, it's actually really insane that we start off at such a low number, end off at a relatively decent number, and still be able to sustain and keep fighting the way that we are. Going into our man stats, the most important thing to really get out of this is our crit damage. So as you can see on the far right, the amount of additional crit damage your crit hits do. So all you really need to understand is all crits, they start off at a base of 50. On top of that base, you then have your actual number of crit damage. Mine is 59. So that means that you take 59, add it with 50, and that means I'm sitting at a total of 109% increased crit damage. And as you can see on the far right, there is a maximum for how much crit damage you can do to a target. It's 125% with your bonuses. As far as I know, this does not include debuffs, at least in PvP, because you can get past that through debuffs, but also as well, it is reasons to go over it in general in PvP because people have crit resistance. So if I have 125% crit damage, I will not hit you for 125% more damage. I will hit you for 105% if you have the base 20% crit resistance that all players have. You don't have to do anything for this crit resistance besides exist and play the game. You will always have that crit resistance on you. With that being said, we do have some damage done that's from our CP, but we'll get into how we stack even more damage done as well in a moment. We have crit healing, and operates the same way as crit damage does. However, there is no crit resistance, there is no thing stopping you from getting crit healing. Like, if I have, say, 40% crit resistance, it's not as if it's going to stop my crit healing. It won't do that. So that's really, really great. And that makes it where what we're doing in particular when it comes down to our build is really strong. So that means we're at 87% crit healing. And as you can see, we have 5% from bar for our healing done. And then when we go to our back bar, we have 16%. When we do healthy offering, which is minor mending, we're now at 24%. If you was walking to 0 at this point, you'd be sitting at 44% increased healing done. And then whenever you crit, you would then have an 87% increase on top of that. So it was really, really strong in terms of the healing, and that's just from one burst heal coming in. Let's get into our sets real fast. So from bar, we have innate axiom, we have dual wield axes. This gives us all that crit damage that we were stacking up earlier. This gives us weapon damage, magicka, stamina, crit chance, and then finally, it will add tooltip increase of 386 for weapon and spell damage on our class abilities. Now, how this works, at least for my bar setup, I have all class abilities on my front bar, including Shadowy Disguise. This doesn't do damage, but just FYI, literally all my skills on my front bar are class abilities. You can change out Shadowy Disguise if you want to. You can put Resolving Vigor or any other skills, excluding this one, and preferably this one, onto the front bar if you don't want to have Shadowy Disguise front bar. If you want to have another skill, like I know a lot of people like having Resolving Vigor front bar, that's perfectly valid. You can go and do something like that. I like to keep my Shadowy Disguise front bar. That's just what I like to do. With that being said, really, really solid. Really does allow us to do a lot of bursts very, very quickly. On top of that, we have weapon damage glyph for the right hand, and then for the main hand, we then have poison. Really nice. Both Nern Hone to give us most weapon damage as well. Going over into our ice staff, we have Clever Alchemist. So we're from barring innate, we're back barring clever. We're running the ice staffs, we get mana brittle, and I'll explain how we're doing that later. But we're getting powered, so increased healing. And on top of that, the poisons that we're running is literally the same thing as Crown Lethal poisons. You can literally just read it right there. Exactly the same timers, everything. It's just these ones are craftable. These ones, you have to go and buy them, or you get them through the daily rewards. You know, just logging in and accepting them. That's all you gotta do. So with that being said, these are really, really strong, and they work. Going into this, we are running Arch Druid. If you don't want to run Arch Druid, which, if you want to know what it does, it gives you penetration, and then when you do damage with a heavy attack, after 1.2 seconds, it's going to throw out a giant ass bear, golden bear. It's going to shout at the targets, dealing some shock damage, and then on top of that, apply major vulnerability to all the targets, up to 6 enemies actually. So up to 6 enemies are allowed to get major vulnerability from this. So if you throw it out in the middle of a big group fight and 6 people get hit by the damage or the shock damage, they get major vulnerability on them. It makes them take 10% more damage. Really, really strong, and occur every 15 seconds, so really, really nice. Timer's not really bad on that either. Clever Alchemist, again, health, weapon damage. When you drink a potion, it gives you weapon damage. It's pretty standard. I think a lot of people really understand how Clever Alchemist works. Don't really have to explain it too much, but going over innate, that's not something that most people are running. They don't really understand how that works. And again, the reason why I'm running innate instead of saying War Maidens is not all my skills are magicka. So concealed weapon is mag. Merciless Resolve is mag. Power Extraction is not magicka, it is disease. Same with Killer Blade, disease. And then Incapacitating Strike is also disease. So that's why I run innate axiom instead of running, say, War Maidens or any other set that is particularly for tooltip increase, but it's for mag or it's for fire or anything else like that. Better for me to just have access to all that. Lastly, going into it, for our jewelry, we have One Piece Trainee. This is giving us a little bit more health, and I'll go over the traits in a second so you can kind of understand what I'm doing for them as well. Get the 1 ring of innate, and then Death Leader's Feet. All of this is weapon damage as well, just give us as much damage as possible. And how Death Leader's Feet works is very simple. You gain a persistent stack of escalating feats every 2 seconds while you're in combat, up to a maximum of 30 stacks. Each stack increases your magicka, health, and stamina by 88. And you lose a stack of escalating feat every 4 seconds that you're out of combat. So, what this does is it gives us a maximum of 2,640 magicka, health, and stamina. However, with my particular build, I have a lot of things like the siphoning passive that we was just talking about earlier that's giving me max magicka. There's things like the Undaunted passive that gives you max magicka, for instance. Undaunted metal. For every... You just need to have one piece of light, one piece of medium, one piece of heavy, and you will gain access to an additional 6% max magicka, stamina, and health. So, really strong. This is giving you a lot of resources, and this is a passive that anybody can pick up. That comboed with the shadow passives that's giving me max health, comboed with the heavy armor passives that is then also giving me health. You know, I have 3-piece heavy on that's giving me 6% max health. So 6 plus 6 plus 6, that's 18%. On top of, for my max magicka, 6 plus 8, 14% max magicka. Really strong. Then comboed with the fact that I already have a lot of max health. I'm starting off at 46k. I'm actually ending off around 49k when I'm fully buffed. And then when it comes to my magicka, I'm ending off at 26k. My stamina's ending off roughly like 24, almost 25k. So that's how my particular setup is. And once you realize like, oh, you have almost 50k health solo, and then on top of that you're then starting, well, not starting, you're ending off at 27 almost max magicka, is not hard to see that, okay, this tune actually does have fairly good amount of sustain, especially considering that the first thing that people will say when they're fighting a mag tune is, oh, drain his stamina. I'm starting off at 21 and I end at 24. That's higher than some people have for their stam tune. Some people don't have 24k stam. They have like 21, maybe 23. There are people that do that. Yeah, they may have better stam recovery, but at the same time though, I'm literally starting off with more stamina. Well, I'm ending off with more stamina with you. So there is something to be talking about right there. I do have decent crit chance. I'm at 33%, and then it caps at 39% when I proc my minor savagery through my class passive. Right here you can see it. It's also giving me crit damage, but whenever I deal crit damage, I grant me and my team minor savagery. This is basically giving me another 6% crit chance, so that's what gets me to 39%. Pretty strong, considering that even when you look at the rest of the stats right here, not even looking that impressive. We're barely at 4k weapon damage. Then we go into our penetration, we're at 6k. When it comes into our resistance and all that other stuff, not too high. Unbuffed was at 15k. Go invisible, proc this, go from bar, 24. Physical resistance 23. Not too shabby, it's not the best, but the most notable thing I'd say is looking at our crit resistance. It's at 2,600. Really strong. That right there is actually the most important thing to even look at for this entire build. Us having that much crit resistance with this much health really does force people to actually have really strong hits, and it's hard to deal 10,000 plus damage without critting. You have to have a really strong build, and most people cannot do such a thing. So me having Vampire Stage 3 alongside having a lot of passives, not necessarily passive, but really just a lot of max health, really makes it where I can really sit around at lower health and have that damage mitigation, have that sustainability to just eat your shots, and you have to be hitting harder and harder each time just to make that 10,000 hit. And when you really get deep into it, I'm basically able to take 10Ks right there. I can take 10Ks. You know, like, yeah, I'm only at 46,000, but you have to hit me 5 times with 10Ks if you're trying to burst me very quickly. Most people have maybe 3, maybe 4 if their setup is really capable of pushing it for 10,000 hits plus. Most of the time people have 2. It's Dawnbreaker and then their execute, or it's their ultimate in general and then their execute, or a particular skill like Molten Whip and maybe Merciless Resolve if they're Nightblade. You know, not a lot of classes have a skill that can hit so hard that is able to do something like that. Most of the time it's multiple whips and maybe a deep breath if you pop corrosive, because I've seen some of them hit pretty decently hard. But if you have major evasion, it's not impossible to make that thing just start going all the way back down to 7k. Again, you can already see how some of the resources are. Once we start getting into the buffs and everything, it really does change. This build does a lot. Going into our skills real fast, we got concealed weapon. This gives us really everything that we need. We can set the target off balance when we strike them from behind or from the flank if we're like left or right of them. This also gives us major berserk. Now how this procs is whenever you're leaving sneak, invisibility, or you cast the skill, so you just deal damage while under effects of major expedition. So if I, for instance, activate my refreshing path, which is healing me by the way, and then I go ahead and do say a medium weave or whatever I'm doing, I could just hit conceal immediately on a target. It will then give me major berserk. This is really nice considering that it also gives me minor expedition. So that means that when I'm fighting you and I'm standing inside this, or when I step out of it, because it lasts for 3 seconds outside of it, but say I'm fighting you inside this, I have major and minor expedition, so I can chase you down quickly, hit you with a conceal, do all the damage I need to do, while at the same time as I'm light attacking, weaving, and doing all this stuff, I just increase my damage. I'm then also getting access to Merciless Resolve. So how this works is, when slotted on either bar, you gain focus every time you light or heavy attack. So if you light attack, you gain 1 stack. If you heavy attack, you gain 2 stacks. Each stack gives you 60 weapon damage, and you can stack it up to 5 times, giving you a maximum of 300 weapon damage. At full stacks, you consume them all and fire a spectral arrow at the target. It does 16,000 damage. This is increased by how much weapon damage you have, by the way, and then also other things like damage done that we do have through concealed weapon. So just so you can kind of see, I can just go invisible, roll dodge out of it, so you can see it increase the tooltip by basically 1,000. This also did proc our shadow, well not shadow, it proc our vampire passive, which gave us a little bit more weapon damage. But just by doing this, we're at 18k, you know, so fairly a bit amount. It goes up pretty quickly. Going into other skills, like for instance, power extraction, really strong skill, does some disease damage, all that, and that's why we're running innate axiom, because it's our class abilities, and like I said earlier, not all of our class abilities do magic, so War Maidens wouldn't be valid in this scenario. Yeah, I could have run Sapped Essence, but then I'll be missing out on these 2 buffs and debuffs here. So we gain access to Major Brutality and Sorcery, so that's 20% increase to our weapon and spell damage, and then on top of that, I gain Minor Courage. This is giving me 215 weapon and spell damage. When I hit an enemy with this, they gain Minor Cowardice. This lowers their weapon damage by 215. Comboing that with Killer's Blade, which is just our execute, it also heals me if the enemy that I struck with it dies within 2 seconds. What's really nice about this one in particular is you don't have to kill them, they just have to die. So if I hit you with a Killer's Blade and you die, I get heals from it. But if I hit you with a Killer's Blade, you jump off the map for some dumb reason and die, I still get health from killing you, or at least assisting in killing you within 2 seconds. So wherever how you die, I gain that health. This then also stacks with Executioner, which, same thing. When an enemy dies within 2 seconds of being damaged by you, you gain 1000 mag and stam. So by me activating Killer's Blade, I literally restore all my resources if you die within 2 seconds of being struck by Killer's Blade. So I can heal myself, I get mag and stam back. Not as much mag and stam, but something, you know. And if I really wanted to, you know, try being a menace or like really try to restore my magic back, if you're killed with a Destruction Staff ability, which on my back bar I have Elemental Susceptibility, so if I do a fully charged heavy attack and hit you with this and you are so low health and so unfortunate to die to this, I'm going to restore additional 3,600 magicka from doing that. What's really crazy about that in particular is that stacks with the Assassination passive, so that means that me hitting you with this, and then on top of that, I restored basically 5,000 mag right then and there. That's a lot of mag to get right back. So really strong in terms of sustain. Now you can kind of see just by looking at some of these passives and hearing them. Oh yeah, no wonder why it's actually easy to sustain the build, but you gotta know what you're doing. That's how we're doing this. Sharding Disguise. Become invisible for 3 seconds. Your next skill after being used within those 3 seconds is always a crit strike, and then it gives us Major Prophecy and Major Savagery. This just increases our crit chance rating, and then Incapacitating Strike makes the enemy take 20% more damage and can stun them. If we have the ultimate up to 130, it starts off at 75, which is really nice, so that you can do the non-stun version if you wanted to, just to pump out a little bit more damage quickly. And if you set the target off balance with Conceal, so you was flanking the target and you do a light attack Conceal just to maximize as much damage, and then you do an Incapacitating Strike into a medium weave, you can then use Merciless Resolve or Killer's Blade if the target is low enough with Killer's Blade, and finish them off immediately. That's a combo right there, and that's typically how the combo goes down. Going into our back bar, we have Refreshing Path. This is the skill I was talking about earlier that we put down. This gives us Major Expedition, Minor Endurance, Minor Intellect, so this is all of our recovery that we need. It's another 15%. And on top of that, it then heals us, and any ally that steps into you, and any allies that step into this area gain the same buffs: Major Expedition, Minor Endurance, Minor Intellect, and they get healed. Really strong skill. Elemental Susceptibility. What's really strong about this skill is it does a little bit of damage because you're proccing the Burning, Chilled, and Concussed status effects. It also applies Major Breach to the target, and what's really dangerous is by we proccing these status effects, we're applying the Burning status effect, which does damage and then applies a fire dot on the target. Chilled, which does some frost damage immediately, and then on top of that it applies Minor Maim and Minor Brittle. From the Minor Maim, it's just 5% less damage that they occur. Like, they do 5% less damage. The Minor Brittle though is really strong because this lets it hit harder. It makes them take 10% more crit damage. So in our particular setup, we've already discussed that we have something that's applying Major Vulnerability. Well, Major Vulnerability is 10% damage taken. This then stacks with Minor Brittle. So that means that if we was to crit the target, we do 20% more damage, which then stacks with Killer's Blade, which means that we already have 40% increased damage on the target when we crit. So they're taking literally almost half more damage, and then through the Concussed status effect, they're now taking additional 5% more damage because Concussed procs Minor Vulnerability. It also does shock damage. So that means that when we're fully buffed and the enemy is fully debuffed with Major Berserk on our side, we're looking at 10 plus 45. That's 55% increased damage done overall for our attacks. Really strong, considering that we also have a tooltip increase for all of our class abilities, which will then stack with the damage done that we're doing. And then as well, we have a lot of weapon damage kicking in, increasing our tooltip number significantly. So that's how we're hitting hard, and that's how we're making the enemies take a lot of damage. We also have Major Breach, which is Major Breach, just reduces the resistances. Nothing major, it's just Major Breach. And I am serious on that. Major Breach is nice, but this skill cannot give out Major Breach, and I wouldn't say it's terrible. I'd much rather have all the other status effects that it does than Major Breach. Going into siphoning attacks, this skill right here is our sustain, so that whenever I light attack or heavy attack, it restores Magicka to me. It also restores Magicka to me as well. Kinda already went over this, so you kinda see what's going on with that. That's our sustain. It's a little bit of healing as well. Going into Healthy Offering, whenever I activate the skill, it either heals me or ally in front of me for X amount of health. Right now it's 10k. It can get up even higher when I have more weapon damage, and on top of that, increase my healing done by activating the skill. You can see it right here. Go and activate it, and then increase it by more or less 1k. Really strong. Get the Minor Mending, and then Resolving Vigor is a HOTS that lasts for 5 seconds, and it will heal me, and it will also give me Minor Resolve, so it increases my resistances while also at the same time is affected by all of the other stuff that's going on. So if I hit Healthy Offering and I have a lot of Death Dealer's Feet stacks up, this will heal better. On top of it healing better, it would then give me Minor Resolve, which then stacks with the Major resolve that I get from proccing any shadow passive right here, any shadow skill I should say that I do will grant me that. So conceal, shadowy, and refreshing path all can give me major resolve, allowing me to be sitting at a fairly decent amount of resistance while at the same time having a fair bit amount of heals, because I have 4 skills on my back bar that can heal me, and I have 2 skills on my front bar that can heal me. So if I kill the target, or if I just deal damage within, I believe, 5 meters, well, it says melee range, so 5 to 7 meters is melee for the most part, I'm going to heal for 52% of the damage right there. I'm going to heal for any light attacks I'm going to do. I'm going to heal for standing inside this path. I'm going to heal for the first 5 seconds of this skill active. And I'm going to heal every time that I activate this skill. It does drain my health of 1000 over the course of 3 seconds. Which sounds kind of bad until you realize that the healing that it does is really, really strong. The highest I've healed myself for this particular skill on this build was at 17k. But on other builds, I've been able to easily push that into 21, 23k. So me reaching a 17k, while other builds have been able to reach even higher healing, while at the same time doing a lot of debuffs and sitting at a far bit more health than most other people, allows for me to constantly be on the fight, being able to sit inside my hots, constantly be attacking, and being able to heal whenever I feel it's appropriate to heal. Because they have to chew through a lot more damage before they're able to make it where I have to sit on my back bar. And then obviously back bar ultimate, I have Swarming Scion, gives me max resources. It will heal me for all the damage that I deal while that skill's active. And also does a swarm of bats around me, and it will shred the enemies for magic damage every second. Really nice, considering that, again, all the other stuff that I was just talking about still is capable of healing me. And the nice thing about this too is you don't have to run that ultimate. I can go and run the other version of Soul Tether, Soul Siphon. This right here just does damage and will heal me for half the damage that I do. However, Soul Siphon doesn't do any damage and it's just completely heal. So how that works is it will heal me for X amount of initially for a burst. It will apply major vulnerability to, not vulnerability, major vitality to me and my teammates that are all inside of it. And then on top of that is then going to heal with a hot over the course of 4 seconds. So really, really strong, considering that it's just a little heal ulti that I can just put on my back bar. So if you want to be more optimized, use Soul Siphon. Really, really strong, good utility. You want to just have fun, use Swarming Scion. It's really nice. It's also a decent get out of jail free card. It's not the best, because it doesn't restore your magicka and stamina, it just restores your health all the way back up. And then as well, because we have so much health, we're starting off at 44 back bar and 46 front bar. You actually get up to like 60 plus health when you activate this skill. Really, really nice, considering that once you then also get the Death Dealer feat stacks, you're going to be even higher than 60k. You're going to be pushing like 65, 67k health, because you already have so many passives increasing your health. And if you was to then be in a group and get minor toughness, you could definitely get it up to 70k. And yeah, that's right, a 70k health Nightblade DPS. So yeah, not too crazy, not too crazy, pretty standard. Going into CP, right now we're running Fighting Finesse, we got Deadly Aim, Mastered Arms, and then finally I currently have Resilience. This is to give me more crit resistance. If you feel like you don't really need crit resistance, you can go ahead and put on Exploiter. This will give you another 10% increase to your damage done when you set the targets off balance. So when you set the targets off balance with Conceal, you can then hit them with Incap, and then combo this with Deadly Aim and Mastered Arms. 12% plus 10%, that's 22% increased damage done. And we were just talking about earlier, once you include both our buffs and debuffs on the target, we was at 55. Plus the 22, that means that we're at 77% increased damage done, while then also running Fighting Finesse, which is giving us more crit damage and crit healing. So that 59% that we were sitting at and the 37% we were sitting at for our crit damage and crit healing respectively was already being affected by Fighting Finesse. When you go into Battlegrounds, you're going to be sitting at less. But also with the debuffs that we was talking about earlier, when it comes to particularly our crit damage with minor brittle, that means that you actually are sitting at, instead of 59 when you debuff the target, you're actually sitting at 69%. Nice. Finally, for our red CP, we got slippery, we got fortified, we got boundless vitality. This just give us a little bit more armor. Honestly, armor is not as important in this game as a lot of people make it out to seem, but I know a lot of people, preferably when they make YouTube videos and they get build videos from YouTube, they want to see a lot of armor. That's why I put it on. Combo that with boundless vitality, which is necessary because we need to have more health in this tune just to pump out as much as possible. With Bastion allows us to have a fair bit amount of survivability. And the reason why we're running Bastion at all is, one, there's a lot of people with damage shields out, and then two, by us running the Ice Staff back bar, the Tri-Focus passive gives us a damage shield. Right now this is a 17k. When we go to our back bar, it is actually just a, yeah, still 17k. Really strong, considering that we are still able to increase our max health to make it even stronger, because it is based off of our max health. So yeah, we could probably get that up to a 20k. And the damage shields, they're decreased in battle spirits or anytime you're doing any PvP in general by, I want to say 50%, but it may be 55%. I'm gonna just say 50, so it's a little bit easier to guess the number at that point of how much damage shields you're getting. If I'm able to get the tooltip up to a 20k in this scenario, right, that means I'll have a 10k damage shield when I'm fighting. Am I able to get it up to a 20k? I haven't checked when I'm at full health. Probably with Swarming Scion, I'm definitely getting that much from it. But if I'm just be honest and be realistic with y'all, I'm probably getting like maybe an 8, almost 9k damage shield from that. Still really strong, but it's not a 20k. So with that being said, getting almost a 18, well, getting almost a 19k, not 19k, I keep saying this wrong. Getting almost a 9k damage shield is really great, considering that that's a lot of damage that people have to cut through before they're able to really do anything. They have to first cut through 9,000 damage from a heavy attack, and then they have to cut through my health. So yeah, that's why we're running Bastion, just to make it a little bit harder for people to survive. And when we're fighting people that are doing the same thing, it's harder for them to do it. Now, if you don't want to run Boundless and you don't want to run Fortified, you can run other sets, CP, like Juggernauts, you could run Harden, you can run Peace of Mind. You can obviously do Pain's Refuge. I feel Pain's Refuge is appropriate on this build because you actually have enough health, and you can honestly reason with yourself that if anybody was to start receiving up to a maximum of 20 negative status effects, you could survive, because alone with your health, you could take the hardest hits from that. You're able to take a 20k and not immediately be in execute range. That says a lot, because most people builds, if they get hit for a 20k, they're only at 30%, if that. People can get one shot at by 20ks, and there are plenty of people that can do 20k damage. Going into Relentlessness as well is major protection. You just get stunned or feared, you get that. That isn't bad at all. So if you're looking for more damage mitigation, that's perfectly legitimate. If you even want movement speed or even more recovery when you're sprinting, you can do Refreshing Stride, or you can do Salutary. You have options for it if you're looking for it, but the two 100% that have to stay is Slippery and Bastion. Those two, in my opinion, need to stay. This is so that you're not wasting your stamina, and it's a free break free. And then Bastion, like we were just talking about, damage shield effectiveness for us, and then we cut through people's damage shields easier. So overall, this is how the tune really works out when it comes to our stats. I didn't really showcase high weapon damage stats. I didn't even really buff. In terms of weapon damage, we're starting off at 3k. Let me see if I can find an ad real fast, so you can kind of just see how this goes. Because it's, I believe the weapon damage caps around like 6k. Here, we can see it right here. So just heavy attack this guy once. Boom. So that right there is 5k. Now I'm finna go and find another little crab. Yeah, here he is. Frack it again just to make sure. Now we're at 5.5. We'll do a heavy attack, get the weapon damage glyph. We're at 5.7. Alright, so more or less That's what a weapon damage is. If you want battle orgs, you're going to get more weapon damage. If you want to run another monster set, obviously you can get more weapon damage, depending on what the monster set does. So it is capable of getting to 6k, but I'm not pressed about getting to 6k because it's just not needed. The tooltips are already decent enough for what we need to be doing. Well, shoot. This is unbuffed now, but still. Is already decent enough. And then on top of that, like I was saying, with the buffs and debuffs that we're doing, we're making the targets take a lot more damage. So at that point, what's the point of even necessarily running a lot of weapon damage? We don't need to have a lot of penetration either, because we're at 6k. Then on top of that, when we are debuffing the targets, we're going to take even more losses to their resistance. So we're able to hit pretty hard no matter what. It doesn't really matter. Our tooltips hit good. We don't need to worry about it. Now, with that being said, for the build in and of itself, this is somewhat a little bit difficult. If you really don't know how to play a tune, like you're really terrible at a PvP, you don't understand anything, like you never played PvE before, this is your first game that you're picking up, this is not a build for you. This is a build for somebody that's played this game fairly decently. You have, like, say 500 plus CP and you're able to complete content relatively okay. Like, you can go into a vet dungeon and you may not be the best DPS, you may not be the best healer, but you're able to actually do the mechanics and not worry about immediately dying. You're able to bar swap, you're able to activate your rotation consistently and effectively. If you can hit 60k on a test dummy, and it's like the trial test dummy, if you could do 60k, you can run this build without issues. But you have to be honest with yourself, how did you do it? Because if you're doing it with a heavy attack Sork, yeah, that's probably not the build for you, because you're not bar swapping, you're not taking care of timers that much. But if you're used to proccing timers, you're used to being able to keep up with all this stuff, and you're hitting 60k or getting close to 60k for your parts, this is very much a build for you. You just gotta get used to it and learn all the ins and outs of this, because this build is very, very fun. With that being said, I'm gonna log out of this so you can go into the video of just showcasing all the damage that it does.